with the Retro Hour podcast, and it's time to welcome on this week's very special guest. And if you're a regular listener, you know that we always love having other content creators on the show. Always, get some wonderful geeky conversation as well. We're always up for a bit of that. And today, we're actually invited on someone who is behind one of my favourite YouTube channels. He's been going about 5 years now, and he's got some really in-depth videos. If you're a fan of technology and computers, an absolute must-watch called RetroBytes. I mean, he's the only YouTube channel I can think of that's actually done a 1 hour deep dive into the history of the X11 Unix windowing system. So that is the kind of stuff we're going to be talking about today. Let's welcome on John from RetroBytes. How you doing, mate?
I'm doing grand, thanks. Nice to meet you both.
So, let's start at the beginning. Seems a good place to start. We always like to get a bit of background on our guests. Outside of YouTube and just like life in general, do you remember what originally got you into computers then? What was kind of your earliest memory there?
My first experience was as an infant school, Mrs. Forbes wheeled the big TV out on the trolley, and there underneath it was a VIC-20, the school's first ever computer, and she plugged it in and went, "Children, this is the future." And then we spent 35 minutes trying to load a maths game off tape. Little me was kind of quite excited by that. It's the first time you could do something, and it came out on the TV. It was the first time it wasn't just a one-way street.
What kind of stuff were you doing on it then? Were you doing programming, that kind of stuff?
Oh, no. I was 5, so we were doing a little maths game where we moved a train across the TV. But for someone who'd never seen anything like that before, that was incredibly exciting. We did a thing, and the TV show does something back. So, that was pretty exciting. And then, things moved on a little bit from there.
Was there a point later on where, the BBCs arrived at school? And
the BBCs arrived, and a couple of the parents kind of knew how to program, so they were brought in to, help teach us about this sort of thing. And then someone gave me a photocopy of the manual for the BBC. This is before I had my own computer. And, you're still trying to learn to read, but you're also trying to learn to read the BBC manual at the same time.
I used to love reading computer manuals when I was a kid, though. I got cover to cover with them, yeah.
They were great. They had circuit diagrams in them and everything.
Yeah.
But then as you go through junior school, you now actually know how to read. And you still got the manual. And, I get my own first computer. I start programming on it and start really liking that, and then you discover, there are games that other people have written that you don't have to write yourself. So that, that's pretty exciting. And kind of high school kind of railroaded me in the direction of then comp sci at university, and then I helped start an ISP, and I'm still kind of doing that for the day job.
Yeah, we'll talk more about BBSs and stuff because you've done some great videos on that era as well. You mentioned that getting your first system. So what was the story there then? What was your first system and how did you get it?
Technically it was the Spectrum Plus. Got it on Christmas Day. It caught fire on Boxing Day, singed my mum's carpet. She was not pleased.
How did that happen?
That little diode that's supposed to be in reverse burst to get the voltage right that gets super, super warm. It got super, super warm and then became on fire. So that was not good. My dad took it back to Curry's, and my mum said, "Don't bring one of them back in the house." And then I ended up with an Acorn Electron, and that kind of really was my first proper computer because I had it for more than 2 days.
A bit of an upgrade then.
Yeah, it really did feel like it at the time. There weren't as many games available for it, but you could actually just switch it on and start writing code and playing with it and doing stuff, and because it matched what we had in school. That made a kind of big difference to me. So I felt like it was an upgrade.
Did you get involved in any further culture as well? Were you collecting any magazines at the time?
Yeah, well, kind of after the Acorn, I started buying Amiga Format. That was like my main. I got the odd edition of Acorn User and stuff like that, but that was a bit more sporadic. And Input Magazine, I don't know if you remember that.
Yes, I've got it next to me now.
Have you?
Marshall Cavendish, massive 4-volume binder thing, isn't it, with individual issues inside that teach you how to program.
Yeah, and if you missed one, that was it. You were not doing that game because they split it across 6 editions. Yes, I suppose Amiga Format was the one I got, most regularly and would read from cover to cover. And, it's a good way of getting, games and trying them out as well, because there weren't really demos you could download or anything. So your cover disc was the way to try something out, or some application that you'd would ordinarily never have access to. That's how I got my first C compiler, for example.
I always remember they put like, worth £300 or something on the cover of the magazine, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, with the discs. So I imagine you upgraded to an Amiga then. What was the story?
Oh, yeah. I kind of wanted an A3000, but realised we didn't have, A3000 kind of money, and quickly refocused on the A500. But I got it, in that weird Christmas where they stopped making the A500 and they accidentally launched the A500 Plus. Without telling anyone. Oh, yeah, right. So you'll experience going, I've got some games to try. Why did none of them work? What's going on?
Yes, random guru errors and everything with your mate's copied discs.
That's it, yeah. So, yeah, fortunately then Amiga Format explained what had happened. So it was like, right, okay. Little different for the Amiga 500 then, tiny bit. But, soon you got Kickstart, relocator discs and stuff like that, and then you could play all your mates' games.
That's exactly what I was going to say, Re-Kick, I remember.
Re-Kick, that's it.
That was one of the discs, and suddenly you're like, my whole library, I can use it again.
Everything works.
I imagine you got the Cartoon Classics pack then, did you?
I did indeed, yes. And like everyone, I tried Captain Planet once and put it to one side and never touched it again.
I'm that weirdo that actually quite likes Captain Planet.
Really? You're the one?
Must be, yeah.
I've heard there was one. You're it then, right?
Maybe just for the music. Yeah, Ben Daglish did the music, I think, for that. So,
that was the best bit.
Yeah. Tidied my bedroom to that soundtrack.
Yeah. I must admit, I probably played the Simpsons intro far too much for that reason alone.
That was jaw-dropping.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned there your C compiler then. So did you get into programming then as a kid? Tell us your memories of starting to program. I
mean, mostly sort of Acorn 8-bit stuff, because, that's where I started with Amiga, and then you start getting to assembler on that. And the Amiga was kind of a big step up. But that C compiler started getting me into C. But I was still doing quite a lot. If I was writing stuff, I was still mainly doing it on the BBC. In fact, that was my first ever retro purchase. Like a couple of years after I got the Electron, someone was selling a Master Compact in the local newspaper. A local vicar was selling it for a tenner, so I thought, one careful vicar owner, I'll have that. I did more development on that probably than I did on the Amiga. And then, it was PC after that. And that was about the same time I was starting to look at doing a computer science degree, so I kind of needed to shift focus onto that machine, really.
Well, you did a fantastic video about the ARM processor as well. And back then, we were all being told ARM was the future, and it kind of slowly took off. Obviously, nowadays it's absolutely huge. But what fascinated you about it, and why do you think that story kind of needed to be told?
I suppose I'd always loved the ARM, the Acorn stuff, and then that went into ARM. But I also did some work with ARM as well at one point in the 90s on set-top boxes and stuff. That it never went anywhere, but getting to go in there, go around ARM, meet some people. I also know quite a few people who work for ARM as well, so it's always held a degree of fascination.
Did you ever do any of the robotics stuff? I remember seeing lots of robots that were controlled on BBCs or with
we got to play with the turtle.
Oh, the turtle.
The Valiant turtle and logo, seeing if you could drive it into a desk at speed. It never did move very rapidly.
Well, you mainly cover computing on your channel, but are you much of a gamer as well? What's kind of your history there?
I mean, yeah, like all kids of our age. I mean, the early 8-bit stuff, particularly Elite, I absolutely loved Elite. That was incredible. It was kind of what my Acorn Electron was for a while. So yeah, that, and then sort of really got into it, I suppose, when I got the Amiga, because that was I was exactly the right age for that sort of thing then, and then as I got the PC, that kind of came in more for, I best get something because I'm going to go to university and be a bit more serious about it. And my gaming kind of dropped off a bit, and then at university I just didn't have time for it, and then wife, kids, marriage, etc. So not so much gaming anymore, but during the 90s, during that, particularly that Amiga period, a lot then.
Were you using any of the creative applications on there as well? Or any of the compilers and stuff like Amos or any of those languages? It's
what came with Amiga Format. If they here's Vista, you can you spend 8 or 9 hours rendering a scene of a mountain and a lake. Yeah, I totally lap that stuff up, or Imagine, or the C compart. And I think that they produced an assembler with it at one point as well. I think there was a tutorial from Bullfrog in there, or one of the Bullfrog people, and OctaMED as well. Absolutely loved that thing.
Yeah, OctaMED was amazing. I was a big fan of ProTracker, but when OctaMED came later and the ability to do a lot more, and also extend the tunes, some of those med tunes, I think they had like 8 or 12 channels on them. Yeah, they'd slow down half the tempo. It was insane.
I'd say you're quite into your chip tunes, aren't you, Ravi?
Oh yeah, I love that stuff.
I was going to say, I bet the tracks that Ravi made using OctaMED and Soundtrack were better than the ones I made, which no one should ever hear.
One day I'll preview them.
Well, I loved as well one video that you did talking about the that weird period in the early 90s when they thought living room multimedia set-top boxes were going to be the future. So we're talking, Philips CDI, Commodore CDTV. What did you think of that period then? Because obviously you've explored it again for a video.
I mean, again, I'm just about still a teenager when that's all happening. And, you're reading about these things and it all looks incredibly exciting. And you get to see it in shops and, you're seeing video that kind of looks like video coming out of a computer. The amount of data you could store on a CD, you think, well, this is going to be incredible. I wonder what we're going to do with all of this. And it turns out the answer was Seventh Guest, which was a little disappointing.
It looked amazing, though.
Yeah, it looked incredible. And that's the thing, all these things looked incredible, but some of the gameplay was ropey, to say the least. It was all a bit Dragon's Lair, really, wasn't it? But, I think it's a fascinating period where we had a lot of hope and optimism that didn't quite work out that time round. But later on, that would become a major component of a lot of things we now actually do and that we just think of as normal and standard.
When did you get your first CD-ROM drive? Was that shortly after, or?
No, that was for the PC. I was going to get one for the Amiga, and then they discontinued the 500. Is like, is the CD drive ever coming out? And yeah, that whole Commodore going wrong period. That's when I ended up jumping ship to the PC, and that's where I got my first CD drive, because there was one Christmas they just dropped in price. You got like the sound card to somehow make the CD drive go, and the CD drive, all a nice little bundle sort of price that I could actually afford. And I had a part-time job there, so I could actually get myself one and start playing with it.
Well, set-top boxes really interest me because they were kind of a route for a lot of these companies to go into a new world. So obviously we had Amstrad going into the skyboxes as well, and lots of other companies trying it. It was a really interesting period of time because it was kind of like pre-dot-com boom, but it was like cable set-top box boom, wasn't it? Everybody was trying to do one.
Well, that was it. That thing I did with Acorn was about trying to get set-top boxes under people's tellies to do the internet, so they could have a web browser on their TV. And they were never quite powerful enough, and the interface was never quite right. Somehow trying to navigate a web page of an on-screen mouse driven by an infrared remote control didn't quite work out as well as they'd hoped. But this is, still in the dial-up era, so...
Yeah, it didn't really hit it till like the Roku or like something like that later on.
Yeah, later on, it all got a lot better. But you had so many companies trying, because you had ARM, one division of ARM that I think became Element 14, pushing that stuff heavily. A bunch of the Acorn stuff people went off to form their own set-top box company. And then went on to do Hive, the central heating control thing.
Oh wow! Interesting connection.
If you ever dismantle the firmware to a Hive controller, you'll find a file pling boot in there, because it boots up like it's running the Acorn MOS first before it loads Linux. That's what the bootloader is, because it's the guys who wrote RISC OS. Wow. Paul Fellows and Jonathan Davis. Yeah, the guy who wrote Snapper and Sphinx Adventure. They went on to produce all of that stuff.
Oh wow! That's an interesting history. Yeah, I mean, Acorn at the end, it was always. I mean, I'm looking now the Acorn network computer, which I guess when you're talking about 1996. Which interesting device to look at. And around that time, I remember Acorn doing like their last computer, the Phoebe, that was in like a really like a bright yellow case. Some of those cases actually come up on eBay.
Yeah.
And then it must have been an interesting time to kind of work with Acorn and see a bit of it.
Yeah, you kind of got to go in, but you'd sit in on meetings, but you'd never know which bit that someone was working for. Like they all got hired by Acorn at one point, but some were ARM, some were a different organization. It was kind of all getting a bit odd towards the end in terms of who worked for what, and them trying to figure out what the company structure should be until it, just became ARM's the big thing, and they, shut down the computer division and sold off the other bits to, well, Element 14, then Broadcom, and whatever they are now.
And the operating system got split up as well, didn't it? And went in several directions. I think there's lots of different versions of the Acorn one. To be honest, I can't be able to keep up at the moment with how many versions
there was the Crown Castle was one of them, and then there was Rule, and I could never quite work out entirely what had happened to the tree of RISC OS, but there does just seem to be the open source one left now, I think.
Yeah, which I've got running on a Raspberry Pi, so it's quite, obviously their heritage there. It's kind of a modern day Acorn Archimedes, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah. I feel like it's close enough for my use.
Yeah. I mean, alternative operating systems are something I'm really into. I mess around with like Haiku, MorphOS, Amiga OS. Obviously, you've covered stuff like OS2 on your channel as well. I mean, are you quite into alternative operating systems? Any that you enjoy using?
Yeah, because I jumped ship in the in about 95 to Linux and BSD and OpenBSD, FreeBSD, NetBSD, all of those. I do have MorphOS running on an Apple. I've got somewhere. So yeah, I do kind of quite like the not Microsoft operating systems as a fun thing to play with. Some, for the day job, and others just because you can.
Not having Copilot leaping up. Any opportunity,
yeah. Modern day clip it.
Pretty much.
I was wondering then, was there like an inspiration for you to make your channel, other channels or, people that you'd seen?
Yeah, well, the main impetus for it was a mate of mine, Greg. I was trying to fix an Amiga 2000 at the time, and he said, that'd make an interesting video, because I think he'd lived in a swamp prior to me getting it, and a lot of the traces were missing from the board. The battery had eaten a significant part of the CPU.
Proper restoration project.
Yeah, absolute swamp wreck. Everything was rusty, everything was corroded, the battery had eaten everything. So I was going, he said, that'd make an interesting YouTube video, and I thought, it probably would. And I tried to film a little bit of it, and then we were having our second child, so that kind of went on the back burner. And I decided to revisit it and maybe try and do something with it. And it turns out I didn't want to be a repair channel, and also I'd not filmed most of it anyway, so that would have been a bit awkward. So I decided to pick another machine I've been working on and talk about it, and that's video 1. I ended up phrasing that as sort of, that weird period where IBM decided it would try and make a new bus and force everyone to use it, and nobody did. There was one licensee. And they all went, no, we're doing our own thing. I had a board that had the ISA slots on it, so I thought, that's an interesting story. So that was kind of video number 1. I suppose that kind of made it pretty nerdy from the outset when your first video is about 2 competing PC bus standards.
Really set the direction you go in there.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. And it kind of got nerdier from there, really.
I mean, for people that maybe haven't watched your channel yet, obviously I'll put a link in the show notes. You're not a repair channel, as you said. How would you describe your channel for people that haven't seen it?
Oh, God. When I'm forced to, I have described it as a computer science textbook set to jazz music from the 1920s.
Yes.
So I think gets the aesthetic across fairly well. But yeah, I like to get into the details of stuff. It's not just like a surface. Oh, look, do you remember this computer? Isn't it nice? And that's the end of it. It's like, right, how did it work? What did it do? How did its software go? Why don't we have these things anymore? What happened? I like to have the story of it with also the details of what it is and what made it good and interesting and what possibly made it fail as well in the longer term.
Well, talking of, I won't say it was a failure, but, you've done a video on handhelds, and you're doing kind of more exploration of handhelds. There were a few failures, like the Newton as well, which was a huge one, but the Palm Pilot was one that you did recently. What did you think of that, and how did you get hold of one?
I was absolutely fascinated by the idea of an actual half-functional computer that you could carry around. And We went to some networking show in London, a whole bunch of us. I think it was like a NetWare event or something. That tells you where we were at that point. And we decided to go on to this road that's got like a load of electronic shops on it. We popped in and they had the
Tottenham Court Road.
That's the one, yeah. Yeah, the name would escape me for a second. And we went in there and had a nose, and there were two things there. There was the Palm Pilot and an MP3 player. Both had just been like imported into the UK for the first time. So I decided to get myself a Palm Pilot. My mate got himself an MP3 player. It could hold a grand total of 10 songs.
I think I had the same one, yeah, the Diamond Rio or something.
That's the one, yeah. I eventually got myself one as well. The card with the extra memory on cost more than the player. So do you want 32 meg more? Well, that'll be twice the cost of the machine.
They got you there, didn't they?
Yeah, and you get a whole album on it then.
I mean, the Palm Pilot is an interesting device as well. I mean, it's one that I haven't got. I've got a Sharp Zorus from that era, early 2000s. I've actually got one of the original Apple Newtons as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's interesting that before the smartphone, it really felt like a market that kind of never quite reached its potential, did it? It always like, even playing with them now, I'm like, it's kind of cool, but I mean, were you using these devices much, or was it a bit like me, you get hold of it and you're a bit like, what now?
I mean, I used it a lot for work.
Yeah.
Because I was out doing client appointments and mean stuff, so, an actual calendar that I could keep up to date that reminded me of what I was doing, and access to the odd email was incredibly useful. There are also little applications for everything, just like you've got with your smartphone now. There was a little app for everything, and of course a copy of SimCity when you were bored.
Yeah. Nice to play that on the train.
Yeah. I just spent a lot of time on trains, and SimCity's a very good game for playing on the train. But, its battery lasted long enough. It did a job. But, yeah, outside of a, particularly nerdy subgroup of people, maybe they weren't, useful as a generalized device in the way that the smartphone is. And the problem is they never quite really developed them much further above what they were. They got the original design and they, it got more colors, it got more memory, but it didn't really do very much outside of what it did initially. And then, other devices started to appear that did. And now we've all got a smartphone.
I mean, look at it in the background, people are watching the video version. I mean, you've got some awesome stuff there. So, a lot of CRT monitors. You've got a nice BBC Micro there as well. I mean, how big is your collection then? And what are your highlights of it?
I mean, there's quite a lot of stuff in there. There's also a little cupboard of shame somewhere that you can't see, because that's off camera where the spare bits and the repairs live, and things I should have fixed a while ago and yet still haven't. But I started mostly, with the 8-bit Acorn stuff. My Master Compact was my first ever. I've still got that thing. But then I ended up getting a lot of Econet based stuff. And I got some interesting things in there, like Acorn file stores and MDFSs and stuff like that. Stuff that, used to live in schools and make the files go and stuff. And then quite a lot of Amiga stuff. Well, as you know, and you like as well, I quite like all my Amiga stuff. So, I kind of got one of every type now, if you exclude the tower versions of things. The CD32 still lives in the living room.
Oh, nice.
And since it's been recapped, it actually works again, which is handy.
Yeah, have you got one of those Acorn twin slice machines? I've actually got a poster up at the back because I'm a big fan.
The RISC PC.
Yeah.
No, I've got a couple of RISC PCs behind me, and in fact, you can probably, if I point, you can probably just about see the little.
I thought they were
down.
They were a crazy system because you could stack them up, couldn't you? Really high and have loads of different functions and kind of slots going on each.
Have you seen the pizza oven version they did for a show?
No.
So they got a couple of slices done as pizza ovens. It's in the archive, the Centre for Computing History. They've actually got the pizza oven version they made for a show.
Truly did everything you needed.
I never have to leave your room then, yeah.
That's it. It'd have done well at universities. That's my other stuff is all Unix workstation-y type stuff. You can't quite see it, but there's some SGI stuff, and you can see some of the Sun stuff there in the background. And there's a couple around my feet, which again, you can't see. And I do like doing the Unix side of things. In fact, one of the rarest things I've got, Sun didn't make it, Tadpole did, but I've got a Sun laptop.
Oh, wow.
A Sun workstation in a laptop form factor. I never thought I'd get hold of one of them. And then someone was like, anyone want this thing? I'm clearing out my loft. Yeah. Yes, please.
If you don't want it, yeah. Does that run Solaris then? Does it?
Yeah. I've got Solaris 2.6 on it. You need a few patches for the kernel because it's got some extra bits of hardware that a normal Sun Station doesn't have. But yeah, it's more or less equivalent to a Sun Station 10. It's got little S-bus slots on it and M-bus for the processors and everything. It's pretty cool.
I mean, speaking of, stuff in your collection, is there any retro tech that you think, you'd love to get your hands on, but you haven't been able to get one yet? Any kind of dream machines?
Oh, yes, there are a few. Recently I went to, do you know Retrofest? Happened like a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. So I walk in there, a mate of mine, Chris, calls me over at his table, said, give me a couple of serial cables, and there sitting is one of the machines I've been after since the moment I knew it was a thing, a device called the Torch Unicorn. It's a kind of early Unix thing, but you have to have a BBC Micro to plug it into. But it means you can run system-free Unix on a BBC Micro. There's a 68K in it and about a mega memory and its own little MMU, and I never thought I'd find one of those because that is a very aptly named machine, the Unicorn. But there it was, just sitting on the stand, and Chris was like, oh, my mate Ian's selling it. Do you want it?
Twice.
No, my jaw just fell and sounds didn't come out for a few moments. And then he's like, yes, yeah. No, you can tell Ian I quite like it. Thank you.
Let's Google that now. You haven't heard of that before.
No, it is such an obscure machine. It adds a 68K and a Z80 onto a BBC Micro, so you can run CPM on your BBC Micro, or you can run system-free Unix. But the hard drive weirdly loops through the BBC Micro.
Right.
So the BBC is like an I/O processor and terminal for it. But it meant you had a version of Unix that could access Ethernet and stuff.
I thought it was really weird that they had the Dragon 32 had this thing called the Dragon's Claw, which enabled BBC hardware to also kind of run on there. And I love when you've got systems that are kind of, working with other ones and stuff that it really shouldn't. Yeah.
I love some of the crazy add-ons for the Dragon. It's some of the stuff people like an alternate graphics card where green's not the default color. That's pretty exciting. Different processors, CPU, all sorts. It's incredible some of the hardware people have thrown together for that thing.
Well, is there a piece of hardware that you've always wanted that you've never kind of been able to get your hands on?
Yeah, I mean, there are a few things. Like, again, from Torch, they've got a XXX workstation I would like to get my hands on. There's a couple of IBM things. There's a IBM ThinkPad laptop that's got a PowerPC processor in it that's built entirely to run AIX Unix for essentially IBM's Unix version. Love to get hold of one of those, but whenever anyone pops up on eBay, it's the that ThinkPad's really, really expensive. Oh, it's one of those, right? Okay.
I mean, is there any retro tech that you think is maybe a bit underrated or gets kind of overlooked by most people today? Anything you think needs a bit more love?
The poor PSP gets ignored horribly, doesn't it?
I love the PSP.
Yeah, so did I. It was like the first handheld gaming thing that I bought because I kind of couldn't quite afford the batteries for the Game Gear, and I kind of missed out on the Game Boy. It was like that was the first one that I got and played regular. I thought that thing was incredible. It's a little SGI machine in the handheld. This thing's amazing. And yeah, that thing gets no love whatsoever. This one, didn't do as well as Nintendo's handheld. That's it. That's coverage for the PSP, which I think is a bit cruel.
And you can get movies on little discs as well.
Yeah, those little UMD discs. Yeah. I mean, they were brave doing their own optical format.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they were the guys that
were about $5 each.
Yeah, well, they were the guys that could do it, though, weren't they?
Yeah,
Sony.
Yeah, if anyone can make a new optical format, probably going to be them. I mean, they probably made another 5 or 6 after that.
So, in your videos, you go into a lot of technical detail, and I know some other channels you mentioned earlier just skim over stuff. What makes you really want to go into this detail and research it, and how do you do your research as well?
It's the details, the bit that always fascinated me anyway. I mean, you can tell I was an Amiga format, not an Amiga power user. But yeah, I really like the technical details of stuff. So when I get into it, it's kind of my way into it, for example. But I'm also typically covering something that I've had some involvement with in the past. So I've kind of got a sort of, I know an amount about it, and then, you can research and learn a lot more. But I mean, things like bit savers is really handy for here is a ton of technical documentation on this thing that I can just sit and read. And you can find out an awful lot, from their manuals, and particularly repair manuals. They're great for here's the actually how it works side of things, which can be it's interesting to me. And then I try and distill it down into something most people wouldn't mind learning about, and then try and put the story of what's happening business wise with it at the time. Why did they make a thing that worked like this? What was the reason? And try and
do you look at
as well.
Many adverts or like magazines at the time? In that context,
it depends on so some things are a lot more accessible to magazines. Like, you want to talk about the Amiga, there were a million magazines about the Amiga. Most of them are online. I got a stack of Amiga formats that are taller than I am. Same with Acorn User and stuff like that. Once you start getting into the more obscure Unix stuff, you start to get less and less coverage in stuff. But you do get things like research papers and stuff like that universities put out. So that stuff tends to focus more on those papers that a university might have put out about something, or Sun might have done a white paper about this is how this thing works, or again, the old technical documentation that was kicking around. There are still things like, Dobbs Journal and Practical Electronics and stuff like that. I've got, particularly for the 70s and early 80s stuff that, didn't get a mass market. They still managed to cover a surprising amount of that.
Well, one of your videos, as soon as I saw this land on my timeline, I thought, yeah, again, something very unique to your channel. I have a PDP-10 mainframe in my living room. Tell us about this then, and how on earth you got hold of this and got it working.
So there's a guy called Oscar who makes these incredible kits of all things DEC, basically. He's done the PDP-8, he's done the PDP-11. You can probably, it's a little blurred, but you can just about see the PDP-11 lurking behind me. The PDP-10's still in the living room, and he created this kit, and honest to goodness, the thing just looks incredible. It was kind of, now that's something I've got to try. And there's him and another fella kind of has been trying to collect the software archive from it, put it together in a useful emulator and package, and get all the bits that you could attach to the PDP emulated and running. So it's let me try things that, even I only got to hear of them rather than try them, because quite a few of them had shut down. Universities had started turning these things off by the time I was getting on the internet. But you could still just about get on some of the early MUDs that were running on the PDP-10. So to actually get to play with the machine and kind of, or a miniature version of it, and be its administrator and tinker with it and see how it worked, that's kind of a really nice and novel experience. And there are also programming languages in there that died out in the 60s that some of these things are written in. So it's really interesting seeing kind of what was precursors to C and some of the other languages being used, and you can see where ideas moved from one to the other. You can also see where DOS nicked a lot of its ideas from, because they were using a PDP-10 to write the first Microsoft Basic on, so that was the environment they were used to using. Same with the guy who created CP/M. So a lot of the command line stuff is very similar in TOPS 10, one of the operating systems for the PDP-10. You can kind of see how one informed the other, because that was just how they were used to using it. So that's why they made their operating system go.
Well, you were talking about precursors as well. You talk about Gopher, which was a precursor to the World Wide Web, and it's very interesting, that video. But could you explain to our listeners a bit more, and like what the advantages and disadvantages of it were?
It's one of those other things. If you have never used the internet before the web was a thing, Gopher seems really weird, and it's entirely text-based. So there's no, you can do graphics, but as in you select an image and it downloads it to your machine, and then hopefully your Gopher client displays it. Most Gopher clients did not. They were kind of text mode only, running on some like DEC terminal or something. But it was very fast for navigation and finding things, and had search built in before there were search engines. Google didn't exist, Alta Vista wasn't there. but you could text search files off file names looking for an FTP download. So Gopher was great for finding, I want the latest version of zip. Where is it? Gopher, search there. There you go. You got a list of files, and Gopher could link you off to FTP things. So you'd talk Gopher to a Gopher server and then pull down. So page is not quite the right word, but yeah. And that'd have the link into the FTP file you could go grab. It was a nice wrapper of all the things that were already on the internet. So there'd be telnet services and stuff like that. Because NASA, for example, had a service you could telnet into, and it kind of did text mode graphics of their launches and stuff, and would tell you information about kind of almost like an early website, but telnet. You could jump into universities' library catalog systems and stuff like that, and Gopher was a way to find all of that and link it all together from one place. The web had totally, steal all its breakfast, but for a brief while, plus for some reason the Internet Engineering Task Force and everyone was really keen on Gopher, and web was being ignored to start with until the university tried to license Gopher and charge people for it, and suddenly there's a lot more interest in the World Wide Web then.
Shot themselves in the foot with that licensing model.
They really did, because you can kind of see the graph of Gopher sites just going as websites start.
It's interesting. After watching your video, I remember reading about Gopher, like back in the early 90s in magazines, and I'd completely forgotten about it, and I actually went on, there's a web browser you can get for the Amiga called iBrowse.
Yeah.
There's actually still being developed today. So I've got like a new version of that does all the SSL and everything, works fine on the modern web, obviously very slowly. But also it's got Gophers built into iBrowse. So I actually started looking. There are still some Gopher sites around, aren't there? There's even a search engine, I think it's called a Gopher Vista.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do like the puns in the world of Gopher. It is a very pun-heavy network.
Yeah, so worth checking out. I'll put that video in the show notes as well if you want to learn a bit more about the web before the web, as you describe it. I mentioned the Amiga there as well. Another video that I loved is when you did you covered the Vampire, which is a FPGA, get that right, modern Amiga system. And I do love those kind of FPGA devices. What do you think of those? Do you think they're good for the future of classic computing? And any plans to cover stuff like the Mega 65 or the Spectrum Next? Any interest there?
I must admit, I do love these FPGA-based things. The first one was the Vampire 2, as an accelerator for the Amiga 600. Yeah. But I decided not to do a video on that because someone had already beaten me to it then.
I think I might have done one a few years ago.
That might be how I found out that the Vampire 2 was actually a thing you could buy. So when the 4 came out, I was pretty keen to get, because, there's the AGA stuff in there as well. And I was quite excited about it's an Amiga I don't have to repair quite so often, or in the case of my 1200s, recap on a alarmingly regular basis. So that was quite nice. I like the idea of it being accelerated and seeing, what could the Amiga have done if we'd, pushed another chip generation or two its way. So I found that quite exciting. I got myself a Spectrum Next, unsurprisingly. I'm probably not going to do a video just because it's been covered so well by so many people in a very, very in-depth way. If I do something with the Spectrum Next, I'm going to have to find a different way of covering it and doing something different with it, rather than just how good at running Spectrum games is this, or what's the next software like, because so many people have done it so brilliantly. There's no point in someone else just doing another video like that. But I think I have an idea of something to do with the Next that's not going to have it being a Spectrum.
Yeah, I've noticed that they're getting a lot cheaper, FPGAs at the moment. The Tang Nano is like ridiculously cheap, and some of the stuff that people are doing compared to when the Vampire first came out is quite an expensive product. You think more users are going to get involved?
I say the Vampire started off as the cheap option, didn't it? Because FPGAs were really cheap. I could buy an original accelerator for the Amiga, and it cost more than 3 or 4 Amigas stuck together. Or I could get the Vampire, which was about a quarter of the price.
But you're still talking in the hundreds.
You're still talking the hundreds, but they were a lot. And then one company ended up owning all the FPGA manufacturers, and unsurprisingly, the price of them skyrocketed, as well as discontinuing a ton of models.
Well, I found that was interesting about the Mister, that it was an educational device originally, and it was like subsidized. and the DE10 Nano, and then so many hobbyists were buying it and using it for gaming and stuff that they kind of ended up closing that line, but lots of clones have arrived, and it's developing a lot.
Yeah, I must admit, I'm quite excited by what's happening in the Mr. FPGA scene. There's, now options to buy consoles that's not buy a stack of boards and kind of design and build your own. It's like, here is a finished thing that you can buy with all the ports on and the FPGAs in it and everything. I think that's going to make it a lot more accessible to people because they don't need to, understand, right, I need a D10 Nano. Okay, so I need some kind of analog board. Maybe I need some of these snap controller things. But I need to put it in a box. Where am I going to get a box? Oh, now I need to buy a 3D printer and learn how to print.
Never ends.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you like doing that stuff, that's amazing. Most people probably don't want to get they just want, can I make my N64 game run on it? Please, just give me a thing to make. And there are now options for doing that where you can just buy a thing and it'll just load in the right settings for the FPGA, and away you go, and you play whatever software you want. Again, I dare say some of those are going to get covered in massive depth the second that they emerge. So I might try and do something very, very different with it.
Yeah, find your own angle on it. That's a good shout.
Well, that's it. Yeah, because I don't think most of my audience are primarily gamers. I don't think you spend an hour watching a video about X11 if gaming's your primary interest. So, yeah, everyone else is going to cover it in a gaming way. I'm probably going to do something weird with it. And
it's a very kind of computery channel, yours is. So,
it's very computery. I mean, when particular algorithms and data structures are part of the video, I think didn't I do SPARC Assembler at one point in an actual video? I thought no one was going to watch that. Do a video on UltraSPARC and start looking at the instruction differences between 32 and 64-bit. And yeah, people actually, it was weirdly popular. It's like the X video. I was making that for me. I thought for my channel that would tank. Turns out it's like the third most popular video I've ever done.
I find, like, if you go in depth on stuff, really, that people soak it up and really enjoy it, I think, actually. And a lot of YouTube things skim over it, so going in that deep is really appreciated.
I think YouTube has somehow glued me up to the right audience for let's look at this in a disturbingly large quantity of detail.
You find your audience are quite I mean, obviously they love technology, but you find, do they give you advice, and are they quite tech savvy then from what you see in your comments?
Oh, yeah. I mean, in some cases, you get the original creators of some of the technology coming on in the comment section, which has been incredible. I did one video about the early internet and ARPANET and suddenly found Vint Cerf was in the comments.
Oh, my God, wow.
That was quite a moment for me. And he actually kind of liked the video. He's like, I can only think of two things wrong in it. So I thought it was worth applying to one video and correcting the few things that needed fixing. So I was like, wow, okay.
It's mind-blowing when that happens. I was over at VCF in New Jersey a few months ago, and I did a panel with some of the original Amiga guys. And after I finished, Headley Davis, who was one of the designers of the Amigas at Commodore, came up to me and said, what's your video on the Amiga 3000? Nice job. I was like, my jaw dropped. I was like, what the hell? This guy knows who I am, and he's watched my video. I couldn't believe it. So
I imagine it must be weird for them. Yeah. So, something they did in their work job, and there's people making videos about it 30 years later. But the one I did about a couple of the DEC videos just had so many DEC engineers coming on and talking, but then they're talking to each other in the comment section because they've not seen each other for 20 odd years, and suddenly found they're planning a reunion in Maynard in the comment section. I mean, and that was kind of that's fantastic.
Yeah. You brought them together. Yeah, it's brilliant.
Well, that's it. Yeah, and some of them were discussing because DEC for some reason started a bank at one point, because they found that some members of their staff couldn't get mortgages because they were living somewhere where people like them don't get mortgages. So DEC were like, but we could do mortgages, and then our staff, regardless of race, can live wherever they want. So they're now something like the second largest lender of mortgages in the US now. DEC's gone. The DEC Credit Union still exists.
Yeah, I love that obscure history. Yeah, it's amazing. That's one thing I often see, people on Reddit doing in the the retro computing groups on there, and YouTubers have done it as well. These are retro challenges where, you know, people only use like retro tech for a week or a weekend. Is there anything you've tried? And if not, I mean, which system would you use then out of your collection to do that?
Oh God, it'd have to be some form of Unix, and I'd need I'd need an actual secure version of SSH on it, so I'd actually have to be able to build modern software on it. But a couple of my Sunboxes would manage that fairly easily. I got an Ultra 45. I could build modern SSH on that, and I did do quite a lot of stuff with that while I was messing. I didn't do work stuff on it because, doing the policy work for that would be awkward. But I did use it for a lot of day-to-day non-work stuff while I was playing with it, because that thing is still remarkably practicable. You know, right now you can build a modernist browser, modern SSL, modern SSH. It runs slower, but not as slowly as you'd think for a machine that's nearly 20 years old. You know, it's got more RAM than, you know, any PC of that era.
Have you seen some of the proxies that they've been doing where, you know, they kind of take a snapshot of the page and then send it to an older machine, and you kind of get a render of it in real time. I think that's so cool.
I do use that stuff on my Amiga. I'm also quite impressed. Is it NetSurf? The slightly more modern.
Yes,
I'm really impressed by what that thing can do. Interpreting CSS on, an accelerated Amiga, but still an actual Amiga. I can look at a modern website on it, and it actually looks like it's supposed to look, and it hasn't outboarded all the processing to something else, which is pretty cool. But those little proxy things I do like, and Frog Find as well. I do love that thing.
Strips out all of the stuff and then displays it as old.
That thing is so useful.
Big shout to Action Retro for setting up that one.
It is incredibly handy. I also got a little proxy I set up for the Wayback When machine that you just set the year on the proxy and then just use your normal browser. It'll just, whatever website you go, it reroutes it through the Wayback When machine. So you're kind of browsing the web as it was at the time, which is quite cool.
Yeah, really convincing then, isn't it? Just like the web would have back then,
Yeah, it tries to use real audio and everything.
Yeah, or should have.
Yeah.
Well, I saw you did a video that you were at Play Expo a couple of years ago. Any events you're planning on attending over the summer? Anything coming up where people can say hello?
There's the retro thing at the Cambridge Museum in November. I'll be going to that one. I even have a little table there. I don't know what I'm bringing yet, but there'll be a table. There will be stuff on it. They've started getting surprisingly popular. The fire limits for the buildings now become the restricting factor. I'll also be doing Retrofest again next year in Swindon. I believe there's a plan to have that be a thing again, because it went rather well this year. I'm hoping there'll be a Kickstart next year I can go to.
Yes, there will be. 2026. We're doing one in summer. And,
excellent.
Already planning that. Yeah, so that's going to be another huge Amiga event. It should be good.
So I'm definitely planning on coming to that one. I went to 24 and really enjoyed that one. And
oh, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
It was a really fun event. There were a few of us there all taunting Reese and his table of Ataris on the door.
Yeah, but I just got him there so people could chuck stuff at him. And
we were remarkably civilized to him, I thought.
Yeah, everyone was actually really nice. Yeah, we had some Spectrum stuff there as well.
But there was some great. I just like going around and meeting people, and as I'm never on camera on my channel, no one ever recognizes me, so I can just wander around and talk to people. It's really nice.
Well, it's been great to catch up with you, though, and look forward to hopefully seeing you at an event at some point over the next few months or year. What's coming up on the channel, and just finally, anything that you're working on right now?
Oh, more stuff on processors at the moment. Someone wants to describe my channel as documenting the crimes of Microsoft and the failures of Intel. So we got another Intel failure coming up. Nice. Look forward to that. Well, RetroBytes is a channel. I'll put a link in the show notes as well. People haven't checked it out. Absolutely recommend it. One of my favourite channels. And they're always, like you said, really in-depth videos you can just leave on while, you're working or doing the housework or something. I often listen to your videos just as like kind of audio on my AirPods, walking the dog or something. It works well for that as well. So I mean, it is almost a podcast with pictures sometimes. Yeah, really, really in-depth and really well done. So best of luck with the channel, John. Thanks so much for coming on and being our guest this week as well. Thanks. It was nice meeting you all.